I'm Janet Booth, a professional astrologer from West Hartford, Connecticut, and welcome to my program on astrology called Looking Up. Our topic today is Shift into Spring, and we're going to talk about the spring equinox and some of the astrological phenomena that's happening around now, and then we're going to end up with something special. And I'm not even going to tell you what yet. Ha ha ha. Okay. So, you might recall that about a year ago I did a program, and the concept was the sign behind. And meaning, there's always an order that the zodiac goes in, and there's the sign we're talking about, and there's a sign behind that. And there's also a sign ahead of that. And signs that are next to each other have like virtually nothing in common. We have different attributes of the signs. There's the one that most people are familiar with, I should say, with which most people are familiar. 4 elements: fire, earth, air, and water. And those rotate around the 12 signs. And there's another attribute that we call mode or quality, and those are 3 of them: cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And cardinal means sort of confront, get motion going, take action. And fixed is like stand your ground or persist. And mutable is dodge and weave. And those 3 attributes also kind of cycle around in that order. So when we have 4 elements and 3 attributes, 4 times 3, guess what? It's 12. So there is only one sign each that is like cardinal, fire, or water, mutable. And when we have the signs next to each other, they're going to be a different element. They're going to be a different mode. And they're even going to be a different, what we call polarity, which is, you could call it yin and yang, masculine and feminine, positive and negative, extrovert, introvert, but those rotate in the, around the zodiac. So 2 signs next to each other, nothing in common. And when I spoke about the sign behind your back, I was talking about how it can either be sort of the wind at your back that propels you forward with something that you're not bringing to the situation through the sign you're in, or it can be like, oh, is that the knife in your back? Because the position behind is almost like, well, not only been there, done that, but it's also where we think we can trip ourselves up because we're going backwards instead of forwards. So today we're going to think a little bit more about going to the sign ahead, which also has very little in common or nothing in common with the sign before it. So when we come to March each year and we cross the threshold from winter into spring, we are moving from the sign of Pisces into the sign of Aries. And we talked quite a bit about Pisces in the show for February this year, which I called Swimming in Stormy Seas, because we're having a big backwards trot of Mercury, the communication and thinking planet, in Pisces throughout most of March. And it runs from March 5th to the 28th. That's pretty much the whole month. Not exactly, but darn close. And what's most interesting about this, well, maybe not most interesting, what's interesting is that Mercury starts going backwards on the 5th, and on the 6th, we have a new moon. And I do believe we talked about that some in the February show, but I'm just going to refresh your memory for a second, because that new moon is very, very close to the planet Neptune. And Neptune is the planet in charge of Pisces. Makes sense. It's the god of the ocean in charge of the sign of the fishes. Perfect. So when we think about fish, they are cold-blooded animals. They take on the temperature of the water they swim through. So the sign of Pisces is very much about reacting to your environment and being affected by it very strongly. When I do readings for people who have a strong Pisces element to their chart or Neptune emphasized, I talk about being a sponge, because you soak up the good and the bad that's around you. So if you're around up people, brings you right up. if you're around Debbie Downer, that's the name of a character on Saturday Night Live old years ago, it brings you down. So you want to be very careful as we are in these first 3 weeks or so of March, when we're in the sign of Pisces still, before we shift into spring at the spring equinox on the 20th, that this is the time where everybody, not just Pisces people, not just people with Neptune strong in their chart, they're feeling the effects of everything that's going on around them. When you think of that symbol of Pisces, you might think of two fish almost like chasing each other's tails, or there's the idea of swimming around in circles and not kind of getting anywhere, always adapting but never striking forward with a lot of personal willpower. That is a trait very attributable to Aries, and Aries is the main sign of individuality, and Pisces is where you lose your individuality into the ocean of mankind. You're just one little drop in the big sea, whereas in Aries it's like, oh, all about me. So that's quite different energy. So we may see, or you may notice in your daily life, people giving of themselves, extending themselves for others, not paying attention to themselves too much until we get to that shift into spring. And then it's going to be, oh, wow, I better take care of myself. You know, in some ways, it's almost a better time to start your New Year's resolutions with Aries, with the I'm going to take control of my own life kind of energy. And in fact, in astrology, we consider the spring equinox to be like the astrological new year. And in fact, this year at the Astrological Society of Connecticut, we will be celebrating the spring equinox on the 21st, that's a Thursday, and you can find details at myasc.org. And on Saturday the 23rd, we're having a special workshop, and it's going to be about the book of Revelation from the end of the Bible, and how that is viewed as a time capsule for the long age of Pisces, which is 2,160 years. We say it's that long. There's kind of like fuzzy beginning and end, an overlap. And we're moving out of Pisces, and those great ages go backwards, moving into the age of Aquarius, out of the age where it's all about your beliefs and into an age of more about science. So that's one reason why we kind of see in our culture right now a backlash against science by the people who have the strongest like evangelical beliefs. They believe the apocalypse is coming. And in the book of Revelation, it's apocalyptic, but it's not the end of the whole world. It's the end of the age of Pisces. So, and that'll be okay. You know, the Catholic Church is very associated with Christianity. It's having its scandal right under the microscope. As I'm filming this today on the 21st of February, there's a big Vatican Council about all the abuse, sexual abuse. Wild times, I tell you. So, new moon, March 6th, 11:04 a.m. Eastern, 1 degree away from Neptune. It's going to have a very strong Neptunian flavor. You may find that you're kind of ungrounded unless you make an effort to be better grounded. And you certainly can do that because we have Saturn, a very down-to-earth planet, in its powerful sign of rulership, Capricorn, and it's just about exactly 2 signs from Neptune now, not perfectly, but within a couple degrees, and that's a relationship that helps build a sort of helpful, harmonious interplay between their energies. So that'll help you be grounded. One of the things that's difficult with this new moon, and it carries through past the spring equinox, that at the new moon there is Mercury nearly motionless at the final degree of Pisces, which is a difficult degree. So if you have important thinking or deciding to do, work on the feeling level, not just the information level, but you better have all your facts in a row, and Saturn would like to help you do that. But it might not be a decision that sticks. You may find that you're back and forth and on the fence and not even making your mind up totally until later into April, when Mercury gets totally out of the degree range where it backs up, and that'll be about, I forget, maybe it's the 19th or something of April. So, and you can always see these dates and degree ranges on that 2019 on a page bar chart that I've shown you, free download on astrologybooth.com, my website, in the study booth. So we've got that new moon, and what's also very key about March, as we come to that new moon, within hours before that new moon, the planet Uranus, which is so slow it takes 84 years to go around the whole zodiac, 7 years per sign, it enters into Taurus for a 7-year visit. Now Uranus has been in Aries for 7 years, and that's been very volatile. We had the wildfires, and I think the day it went into Aries was the Fukushima nuclear power plant fire after the tsunami on the last day that Uranus was in Pisces. So it's coming into a more stable sign. It's a very kind of shocking planetary energy. It likes to shake things up. I call Uranus the alarm clock. And Taurus is the sign of the earth and the beauty of the earth and the value and the resources of the earth, things that we mine, and just nature in general. So Mother Nature, do you remember that great ad for, I don't know, a margarine product back in the 60s or something? It's not nice to fool Mother Nature. Well, Mother Nature is not very happy with mankind. And in the next 7 years, we are really going to have to buckle down and address climate change. And technology, which is Uranus's forte, is going to help us address those challenges of a changing world and rising sea levels and climate and things like that. So, very strong beginning with this new moon, March 6th. Now, every new moon has a full moon associated with it now, doesn't it? And the full moon, unbelievably or magically or coincidentally, or it's on the day of the spring equinox. So we have the spring equinox that is at 5:59 p.m. That'll be Eastern Daylight Time. And just hours later at 9:43 p.m., both on the 20th of March, is the full moon. So the sun has just entered Aries. It would be at 0 of Aries. And the full moon is always when the moon is exactly opposite the sun, so it will be at 0 of Libra. And we've been having our full moons at 000 from fall, October of 2018, till March of 2019. The April full moon is going to be at 29 Libra. It's the same sign, just there's 30 degrees per sign. Now what happens is, then we start having, each full moon will be about 1.5 degrees lower in its sign than the prior one, so that when we get to just before the summer solstice, there's a full moon, and it's like at, I think, 25 and change, maybe almost 26 of Sagittarius. It means we have 4 full moons in the spring season. Now, this is the origin or the setup and possibility for the true meaning of a blue moon, which blue has nothing to do with the color. It comes from an old, I think, Celtic word, belu, B-E-L-L, I don't know, E-W-E, something like that, means the betrayer. And there was a name for each full moon. There was a Lenten moon in this late winter before spring. If there was an extra full moon in the winter season, you would end up with the Lenten moon coming too soon. You were going to have an extra month of fasting before the spring equinox. They didn't like that. So they stuck in this extra name for that 4th full moon in the season, which is really, no, it's a season of 4 full moons, but they gave the extra name to the 3rd one. So that was the betrayer or blue moon, and we will be having that in, I wondered if I wrote that down. It won't be the one in Sagittarius. It'll be the one in Scorpio in May. I think it's May 25th, around there. We'll talk about that, I think, before we get there. But anyway, so this is interesting because Libra, where we have 2 full moons now, on the first day of spring and about a month later, it's a peaceful sign. And yet Aries, where the sun is going through, is the strong, I'm me, and it's a fighter sign. It's the original sign of the warrior. But Libra is the peacemaker. So what's our message from the universe for this spring? It says, don't make war, make peace. And it says it twice. So we'll see what's happening in the world, but hopefully we're bringing together some elements of peacemaking, not just saber rattling. Both the full moon and the equinox chart have patterns that are called the finger of God. And this is a pattern where it's a triangle, and on 2 sides are things that are kind of a mismatch, but they're joined by a harmony connector. And so its message is sort of weird event A leads to bizarre event B, and we say, oh God, what's the reason for this? But B leads to C, and C turns out to be cool. So expect some strange stuff to go on that in the end is going to turn out okay. And the common energy that's in both of these fingers is with Jupiter for growth, benefit. Jupiter's going through Sagittarius, its own sign, the sign that relates to international relations, as well as commerce at a distance. Things like the trade tariffs are sort of underneath that auspice. And it's connecting with what we call the north node of the moon. The nodes are 2 points exactly opposite each other, and they're the intersections of the 2 important orbits, Earth around the sun, moon around the earth as we go around the sun. Eclipses happen when these sun, moon, newer full moons line up near these nodes. We'll have our eclipses later in the summer. But the nodes are our directional indicators. They say, where are we coming from? Where are we heading to? So the nodes right now are coming from the Capricorn South Node, which is kind of hard-nosed and by the book and very much about power concentrated in corporations and government. But the North Node that we're heading toward is in Cancer. It's about families, women and children, home, protection, food sources. You know, even when you think about, oh, our government tore families apart at the border, kind of interesting because the border is a wall and that's very Saturn ruled. Like think about the rings around Saturn. That's the ruler of Capricorn. So we have a lot of things going on at this period that involve this move away from a hard, cold heart to a soft, warm embrace. And to do that internationally. Mars is one of the planets in the finger of God, so it says, put down your weapons. Mars for this spring equinox and the full moon as well is now in Taurus. It spent the first month or so of, a little more than a month, from New Year's Eve to the 18th or so of February in Aries, which was like, oh, gung-ho and fight, fight. But now it's more like, well, let's take a breath. Let's wait a minute. Let's not go crazy here. And the other pattern involves Venus and Pluto. Interesting. Venus with Jupiter. Fortunate matters for, well, peace, harmony, relationships. Good for relationships. And Venus is a money planet as well. So is Pluto. Pluto is the big power and money, shared money planet. So it ends up at sort of in the middle or the release point of this finger of God. And sometimes I say, well, we sometimes wonder what finger God's pointing us to or showing us. But it's the pointer finger. It's just giving us the divine detour to shift our path. Shift. We talked about shift into spring. So money matters are going to also shift some in this spring chart or in this spring season. And we'll see if they don't gravitate more towards helping families. Even Cancer, the sign of the North Node, that's the USA sun sign, so yippee. We also have a nice thing called a grand trine in the spring equinox chart. And this is in the earth signs to help us pay more attention to earth and be more grounded. And it's moon in Virgo at the equinox. Hours later, it enters 0 Libra, and that's the full moon. But at the equinox and for the spring season, the Virgo moon says analyze, serve, figure out the details. There's also a tendency to be kind of picky and critical, so we'll have to watch that feature. But our triangle has Pluto, change, transformation, with Mars, how we attack things or approach things and get things done. With this moon, if we bring a more service orientation and patience into our actions, that'll make a big difference, don't you think? Well, you can try it in your personal life, and we'll see if it happens on a more global scale. Also, at both the equinox and the full moon, we have those nodes are always an opposite, with Pluto on one of them, and they're making the square, the T-square, with Eris, that difficult, chaotic energy from that new dwarf planet out past Pluto. So I think this is also showing us that it's a time to try to change and rein in some of the chaos that has been going on. Now there are, let's say there were, 3 planets that are sort of more of the feminine energy or named for goddesses rather than gods. And that's Luna, the moon, Venus, dwarf planet Ceres, and all 3 of those are in, oh, my favorite pattern, the quintile triangle at the full moon. This is 1/5 and 2/5 apart in the sky for magic and talent and luck. So I think it sounds like it should be a lucky season for women. The other and new feminine planet, Eris, is the one that's in that T-square. So we have harmony with the planets that mean nurturing, love, support to one another, and we have shift and change in the planet that says, I don't need anybody else, and I'll just cause chaos if I want to. So I think this is a wonderful thing. And just to speak for a second before we have our special moment, we move from one sign, Pisces, into Aries. We're moving from soft into strong. And we want to take the softness with us when we add the strength to it. So what do they say? The iron fist in the velvet glove. This is more like the iron shovel shoveled by the velvet gloves, something like that. Anyway, so what our special treat for today is, and this goes back to the 70s and 80s, when I first started studying astrology, there was a wonderful series of paintings that were from a Dutch painter named Franciscus Johannes van den Berg. And he took the first 3 letters of his first 2 names and reversed them. So J-O-H from Johannes and F-R-A from Franciscus and Joffre. He founded the Meta-Realist group, which was a subset of the Surrealists, and he did a painting series from 74 to 75, the Zodiac series. And I wrote some poems, which I am a sometimes poet and was big back then, for the different zodiac signs. So I'm going to read today the Pisces poem and the Aries poem. The Pisces poem is entitled, Swimming in the Sea of Life. Neptune, wizened old man of the sea, do you see you are connected to me? Alma maters, the ocean, we're of the same school, chasing our tails, playing the fool. Through seasonal cycles, both up and downstream, like lemmings, we follow the call of the dream. Reflective of spirit, we circle around, learning to swim, only to drown, only to rise again up to the sky, to turn into raindrops and down again fly. And Joffre's paintings also contained a lot of symbols and imagery that goes with the different signs. So you get that feeling of there's sort of going around in circles and not being in a control position. Now the poem for Aries uses the phrase, we have like an I phrase for all of the signs. I believe would be Pisces. I am is for Aries. So this is called a poem for Aries. I am. New life leaps to earth, spring, dawn, rebirth, spark of fire and energy, shining toward infinity. Red beyond which all else pales, light the torch and forge new trails. From the void burst forth, I am. Charge through life, O Martian ram. If you must rush toward where it's steep, be sure to look before you leap. For after the spring comes the fall, a butt of a head against the wall. Don't lose others to find yourself. Put your ego on the shelf. Combat proves no mastery. Victory centers on staying free. With strength, desire, and bravery, you can be what you want to be. Thankful just to be, O Ram, humbly proud. Declare I am. So in that Joffre painting, you see it's very combative looking. But I want to submit to you that the best of Aries is when we know who you are, know who I am, and bring that forward with confidence, upright, good posture. Be initiating, but don't shove things down people's throats. You know, we don't have to be competitive anymore. That was for the age of Aries. We've been through the age of Pisces where we submitted too much. Now it's the age of Aquarius, community of mankind. We should cooperate and be the high beings that we came here to be. So Aries has a lot to do with your strength, and Pisces has a lot to do with your heart. And that combination is unbeatable. So as we shift gears into spring, think about that shift from Pisces to Aries and try to have the best of both qualities in what you're doing for the upcoming 3-month season. And we may talk a little bit more about the season as it goes on Looking Up.